Good evening. I'm George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here with Weather Now Kentucky. We have a moderate risk in effect for Friday, or forecaster for Friday, I should say, which is a level 4 out of 5 risk from the National Weather Service's Storm Prediction Center. So, it's not just us forecasting this event, it's the experts as well. We have a lot of things to talk about here. This is not going to be a one round hit quit, kind of done after that. It's a multi-round event with a few questions still at play, but I think overall we're starting to get an idea of what to expect, when to expect, how to expect, so on and so forth. So before we dive into the information, if you would not mind, share the broadcast at the bottom of your at the bottom of your screen. There's a share button. If you could share the broadcast on your news feed, I would be grateful because it's going to allow us to help keep your friends and family informed as well. They can watch the video there. So thank you to everyone that's going to share the broadcast. We appreciate that. Courtney, Tina, Amanda, Kale, hello. How are you guys doing? Thank you for sharing the broadcast. We'll give it about 45 more seconds before we start diving into the information. Sometimes notifications go out slower or faster depending upon where people are at and their internet speed and so on and so forth. So I'll always try to give it a few moments, if you will, before we get started. Of course, say your hello as you're coming in so I can greet you guys. Missy, hello, how are you? Ivy, what's up, my friend? Amanda, hello. T2 over there on YouTube, hello. Vicky, hello. MK, Elizabeth, hello. Good evening to you guys. Again, we are live on both YouTube and Facebook tonight, like always. And we do have some storm activity going on now. We'll talk about that. We also have a round of storms in the morning that we're expecting, maybe even more toward the overnight time frame. We'll talk about those. Maybe one in the late morning, maybe one in the early afternoon, maybe one in the evening, late overnight, Friday going to Saturday. There's a lot to talk about here, folks. This is not one of those pleasant things that we like to do, but this is going to be one of more of those serious broadcasts. Again, I think tomorrow, I've said it for the last few days, I think tomorrow is the real deal. Today was always more questionable. I told you guys that from the jump. Today's always been more questionable. I think it's Friday, obviously tomorrow, that it's the real deal. There's a lot of factors at play that are checking the boxes of those higher end events. So I want to make sure I'm talking about everything with you guys, and we'll go over timing, we'll look at the model data, we'll look at all the forecasts, we'll look at all that good stuff. So there's not going to be a shred of information that's going to be left out tonight. So this might be a slightly longer broadcast, but I think it's one that's definitely worth staying in here and watching because there is a lot of higher end risks tomorrow that some of which we don't usually deal with here in Kentucky too much. So with that said, we'll go ahead and start diving into the information. I'll say one more time, thank you to everyone that's sharing the broadcast. I appreciate your all's help with that. Again, I don't think you guys realize how much of a factor you guys play in helping us keep folks safe and informed. So thank you for sharing the broadcast. We appreciate you all doing that. Again, it helps us to keep more folks informed. I'm just going to refresh my Facebook suite here because it looks like it's frozen. I want to make sure I see some of your all's comments and questions, which I will get to more toward the end. Thank you for all the hearts that are coming across now, too. Thank you very much. All right, let's go ahead and dive into what we're looking at here. So on your screen right now is the current radar, and it does show some activity to our north here. Now, this is not going to be for us tonight, thankfully. They've had some rough couple of hours up there, and it's really probably just getting started up there to our north. This will continue to scoot off to the east, and this one's kind of connected to it down here for Western Kentucky. But this one, as we mentioned again throughout the last couple of days, what happened earlier, and I was really surprised they even put a watch out. They had storms kind of fire over here in Arkansas, scooting northeast, okay? Mainly east. That's a bad arrow, but you get my point here. What happened was there was so much of a warm surge today. I'm guessing if you guys went outside, you probably felt it too. Those dew points were disgusting outside today. And what happened is that didn't only occur at the surface, it also occurred several thousand feet up above our heads. And when that occurs, there's what we call a cap that's being built. And what that cap does is to help work storms over and keep them from being too bad or too severe, if you will, for lack of better terms, or stops them from going at all. And so what happened is we did have storm spark here, and briefly they were severe, and so the watch got issued pretty fast just because of the amount of CAPE that was out there in wind energy, because there is plenty of that. But the only problem is there was so much that we were actually scientifically referred to as negative energy or convective inhibition, basically once again stopping those storms from getting too bad. And what has happened is these storms have transported over here to Western Kentucky and turned into just mainly rain showers, although there is some red starting to show up now, so maybe some tougher thunder showers. Might hear some lightning. Let me make sure my lightning's turned on. I think it's off, which it is. Yeah, no lightning strikes showing up yet, but once again, maybe a few rumbles of thunder throughout the night for Western Kentucky. It's the early morning hours on Friday where our first real round comes in. If you kind of look back out here to your west, this is kind of a boundary that might be starting to be laid. And what's going to happen is this is going to move to the east a little bit. And then probably, if I had to guess, around 2 to 3 a.m. Eastern time-ish, maybe a little bit earlier than that. We'll talk, again, I'll show you the model data so that way you see it for yourself. Those storms, as this gets over here and we get a little bit cooler in those upper layers, that cap starts to get a little bit weaker. That lid starts to get a little bit more loose. And once it gets just loose enough, those storms will fire, especially with the wind energy that we have, several thousand feet up, 5,000 feet up, so on and so forth. Once all that kind of gets together in the same area, what we refer to as mixing of the best ingredients, storms will fire, and I expect that to occur probably somewhere around western Kentucky, West Tennessee, maybe even southern Illinois, and then those storms move to the east. Exactly how far east the threat exists is a bit unseen, but I expect these storms to be quite rowdy and produce a large hail risk, mainly large hail and damaging winds. I can't rule out maybe even a tornado or two overnight, so definitely gotta keep an eye on that, just because, again, the wind energy that we're looking at with this, if storms can root themselves to the surface, so you're talking about the potential for all hazards, even at something like 6 a.m. in the morning. Quite the event unfolding here. All right, let's go ahead and look at the model data real quickly. And again, I'm going to show you a couple different models like I did last night, just kind of give you a couple of different scenarios, because even though we are only, a few hours from this event really starting, they're still not agreeing, and they never will. All right, so this is the 18Z HRRR model here. This is one of the high resolution models. This is not something that I look at very much, but it does go hour by hour, which helps break it down a little bit better for you guys. For any of you that might want to know, the European model is the one that I look at the most, even when I'm close range. So advancing this forward to about 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is about right now, you'll see that it does not see that activity in western Kentucky. What it actually has is the activity further east into central, almost west central Kentucky, and much weaker. So we can already tell that the model's not handling this great. Okay, so just kind of use those context clues as we're going through here. By the way, time frames are on the top left if you want to see them. If you want Eastern time, just add an hour to it. So for 7 p.m. Central time, it's 8 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, advance this forward around 10, 11 p.m. Eastern time, maybe closer to midnight. Again, those clusters of storms start to fire out in Illinois. That boundary starts to ignite out there in western Kentucky, maybe southern Illinois and east Missouri. And then this will continue to move east and continue to form storms along that boundary. Now, it doesn't see a whole lot, but if I go back to an older run, let's go back to like 12Z or something like that, you'll see that it shows that boundary firing like I thought about. Yeah, there it is. Maybe not that far north. I expect it maybe be a little bit more south than that, just based off of like current trends that we're seeing right now. But you kind of get the idea. So advancing this forward, you'll see it sees those clusters of cells maybe fizzling out once again. I think we'll see that pattern over and over again because this is a closed low pressure. So this is not a very clean cut, one round, one wave, one line type of ordeal. You're going to see several rounds. You're going to see a round fizzle out and then a round come up behind it. Fizzle out behind it, fizzle out behind it, and that's why there's several rounds to this event for late tonight going into Friday morning, as well as into deep into Friday. So advance this forward. That one round fizzles out. Here comes your background around 7 a.m. Eastern time or so out there in western Kentucky, maybe far western Kentucky a little bit earlier than that, 4 to 5 a.m. or so. And again, don't take these time frames for verbatim because we've already seen that. Once again, I just want to point out that right now, valid for right now, it does not see the storms that are actually happening out here. So it's a little bit off. So don't take the timings 100% verbatim. This is why we give you guys windows. Okay. So advances back forward to where we were at around 5 to 6 a.m. It does show quite, a strong complex. Not as severe as the bullseye round, and I'll show you the bullseye round here in a second. But this does still pose a large hail damaging wind risk. And by the way, large hail, what I mean by that is about 2 to 2.5 inches is probably the ceiling of this round. Which is about, golf ball to tennis ball sized hail, along with 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gust. And I cannot rule out a tornado or two, but if it's this messy this morning or tomorrow morning, the tornado risk goes down. But again, that's if that's this messy. Here's a newer run, just kind of show you some context. I'm trying to blow this up for you guys. See, it's not as messy. It's a little bit more organized. And this is a newer run. So this is by the way 4 a.m., 5 a.m. or so. So again, and then you have another organized line just to the south of that. Again, don't take it 100% verbatim because even at this hour, models are wiggling back and forth like badly. very badly. And again, I wouldn't even be using this model really. But again, this is one of the only models that breaks it down hour by hour. So this is what I'm going to show you guys. So advancing this forward, this 18Z run does also see that cluster of storms, especially stronger on the southern side of that storm system. Bowling Green shows a whopping of giant hail toward that area around, let's say, sunrise Friday morning. So again, this is going to catch a lot of folks off guard, guys. Again, we're not used to severe weather happening at sunrise. We're just not. You can get rainfall and some other activity, but as far as severe weather, usually sunrise and just before and just after is usually our calmest time in the environment of each 24-hour period. So this is, again, no matter how many times I say this or how many videos we do or how many graphs that we put out or so on and so forth, this is going to catch people off guard. So just know there is a storm system or a round of storms expected anywhere between 2 a.m. to really about 10 a.m. I know we put 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on that graphic. At the time, that's what looked like the window. But really, we could see multiple rounds before lunchtime tomorrow. So again, I just want to point that out there. Do not get caught off guard by this. Make sure you have a way to receive alerts and notifications and warnings whenever you're sleeping. That's what a NOAA weather radio is for. If your phone is, if you're using your phone, make sure the volume's turned up all the way, so on and so forth. Or just don't go to sleep. But again, just make sure you have multiple ways, especially on the southern half of Kentucky. I think for this morning round, I think it's probably for the southern half of Kentucky. Again, we can see some stronger storms up near the Ohio River, up toward, like, let's say, Louisville, Elizabethtown, so on and so forth. But I think the more concentrated severe warnings for this morning round will likely be on the southern half of Kentucky. All right? Advances forward around lunchtime. We do see a break at some point, maybe a rogue cell or two sometime in the late morning to early afternoon. Again, cannot rule that out either. And then here comes the main, well, this isn't the main line. The main line's actually behind this. So this, I guess, would be technically round 3 if we're looking at this model here. Again, but just look at the whole line. Look at the whole line here. It's basically a horizontal line of just large hail producers. I mean, very large. And also on this line, you're probably looking at some pretty destructive winds. All right, and again, that's not to scare you, it's not to fearmonger you, that's just to tell you what we're seeing. I would not be surprised if we see multiple damaging wind reports of like 80 plus mile per hour tomorrow. I just wouldn't. There's so much wind energy out there, along with a lot of lift and force occurring, that we could see numerous damaging wind reports of stronger than hurricane force winds. And that when you're adding to that the potential for hail that's up to tennis and baseball sized hail, guys, it does not paint a Picasso picture. It's not pretty here. All right. So I say that because a lot of people hear hail and damaging winds and like, oh, okay, here we go again. Just a little bit of small hail and some roundy winds. We'll be good to go. This is not that event. This is a large hail, very, very large hail, and a very destructive wind threat, along with the potential for a few strong tornadoes. Again, 9 times out of 10 during events like this, we would talk about the tornado activity more, but we can't talk about the tornado activity more because the hail threat is so freaking large. It really, really is. So make sure you have a way to get your vehicle into a garage or something to cover it, so on and so forth. Because, obviously you will, in a perfect world, this is not going to happen, but I do believe that this will happen, especially with multiple rounds. We have multiple chances for someone to get hit. It's not like there's one line here, and maybe we can miss a county here, and miss a county here, miss a county there. But this is a very widespread event with multiple rounds, so you have multiple chances to get hit. So it increases your probability of getting hit by one of those large hail cores or damaging wind burst or even a tornado or two. So again, there's multiple rounds to this. So let's evaluate for Friday around 4 to 5 p.m. Again, that horizontal line, it's going to be on that southern side of that line and on the leading edge. That's going to be your most significant spot, okay? Now, don't take this 100% verbatim. This line could be a little bit further north. It could be a little bit further south. Again, the models have not been good or perfect at all, I should say. They've been decent, but they have not been perfect at all. So this line could be a little bit more north, a little bit more south. Just know somewhere in this general vicinity in Kentucky, again, as this line pushes east, can see some destructive thunderstorms. All right. Advancing this forward, that's just your primary line. Here's probably your secondary line. This, to me, has the bullseye of, potential, because this is riding along the front here. So this is where the better wind shear is, the better helicity, all those nerdy scientific terms, okay? The question right now that no one's going to know the answer to, so if anyone tells you they know the answer, they're lying, is how exactly does this front line that we just talked about, how does this impact the environment, okay? 9 times out of 10, when you see a wave come through like this, that was this strong, the first line that we looked at there, when you see that come through, your immediate thought is, okay, we're good to go. That's going to work over the environment. The problem with that is there is going to be so much warm air that when storms are not going, they're going to take advantage of these pockets. Let me show it to you like this. So when storms are not going or they're out of the way, we got the warm air coming up here from the Gulf, right? Move the color bar here. Right, draw some little fancy arrows there. Listen, I'm not Picasso, guys, okay? So just come follow me here, all right? When they have these little pockets like this, the wind or the humidity and the warm air will try to find those little pockets. They want to keep going north because they want to find the low pressure. There's a high, let me zoom this out even further, okay? I'm gonna try to get as good as I can here, okay? There is a low pressure. It's going to be somewhere up here. Just, again, not going to be perfect there, but it's somewhere up there, all right? And then we have a high pressure. It's going to be down here. Now, every time that this happens, okay, the way that this works, and I just erased everything. So let me redo this. Hello, high, hit the wrong button there. And then we'll use green for the arrows. Sound good? Every time that this happens, this high pressure wants to go to the low pressure. It wants to be its best friend. It wants to get as close as possible. So it's going to send all of whatever it's near up to that low pressure, okay? At this point, the high pressure is going to be over the Gulf. So it's going to bring all that warm air, all that humid air that's coming down there from the Gulf up to that low pressure, okay? And that low pressure is going to continue to try to move east. So as that happens, you just got it all going up to the north there. Now, how exactly far north it goes is going to be dependent on how long those storms last in the late morning and the early afternoon on Friday. So if we have a bunch of storms down here, we have so much rainfall down here, right? Obviously, Kentucky's going to get blocked out from that moisture, from that warm air, and it's going to go around Kentucky up toward Indiana, around Kentucky up toward Ohio, and then at that point, Kentucky's energy has been lost, and so we'll still see storms, but they won't be as with as high of a ceiling as what we're talking about. So there's a couple different scenarios to where we can avoid some things. But again, that's kind of how this works. So whenever we see those gaps in storms or breaks in activity, that's where a destabilization can occur, which basically just means that the environment is becoming supportive of strong storms. So again, 9 times out of 10, you will look at this and say, hey, George, this can't be that severe on the backside because this just went through and knocked out everything. The problem with that is we have the gaps. And there's nothing in Tennessee. So we have the gaps for these warm air and humid air to maybe get in here. And if you don't have this stuff in between these two rounds, you have even a bigger gap where that warm air and humid air can get back up in there. And it can really destabilize the environment quickly, guys. We're talking about, hey, we had a storm here an hour ago, but now that environment's ready to support another severe storm because that's how quick it will be. That's how strong that warm air advection is. So again, don't look at this and say, oh, well, that background's not going to be too bad because look what the models are doing with this back line. I mean, that's an entirely rotating line of storms. It is. You got a Hellcore, so on and so forth. All those purples and whites that you're seeing are little supercells, if you will, for lack of better terms, okay, just but in layman terms. Along that line there, this is technically going to be called a quasi-linear convective system. I think that's what we're going to be dealing with at some point tomorrow. This line, these clusters of storms will congeal into a line. So you see how this is a cluster, and when I go back a few hours, and now we're into a linear event, which is a line of storms, which definitely indicates a large, very large hail potential, damaging or destructive wind potential. It does take the tornado potential down a little bit, but even in these lines, you can get these bowing segments to occur that results in some spin-ups, or even those spin-ups even being quite strong with the amount of wind shear and storm energy that we have. So that's why this is an all hazards possible type of day with multiple rounds set up on Friday, and I believe that's why the SPC went ahead and triggered the moderate risk. Is mainly because we're going to see some gaps between these storms. So the storms aren't going to work over the environment enough to stabilize it, to make it nice and calm, to make it just massive rain showers. All right, so there's multiple rounds. And again, all rounds will pretty much have all hazards risk. But the more you go into Friday toward that peak heating or Friday night, that's where you get more toward that tornado risk because that front's getting closer, better forcing, better wind shear. Whereas earlier, like let's say Friday morning, that's more of your hail and damaging wind risk because there's not as much wind shear available with it. So I hope all that makes sense. There's a lot going on there, and I tried to put it in as simply as I possibly could, but there's just so much going on there. All right, what we're looking at now here, is Updraft Helicity. So this is going to show us where storms are rotating, what those paths might be. The brighter the colors, obviously, the worse they are. And I really don't like showing this, but because this floats around social media so much, I like to break down what this is. So advancements 4, just kind of go throughout the whole frame here. It does show a very nice concentrated area of multiple rotating storms, basically the heart of Kentucky from west to east there. And again, don't take this 100% verbatim. This could be a little bit further north, a little bit further south, so on and so forth. But it does indicate several rotation streaks. Rotation does not always mean tornadoes, by the way, guys. It can mean large to very large hail. It can mean destructive winds. It can mean any mode of severe weather. But usually when you see these updraft helicity streaks start to get this bright here, this indicates a pretty higher end severe weather event, whether it's hail, damaging winds, or tornadic activity. In this case, it may be all three. So again, just want to kind of show you there that everything that we're kind of looking at, there's far more to this, but we spent all day back here just kind of breaking this down, but everything that we're looking at screams to us that this is going to be a multi-round, long day on Friday. I'll show you the NAM 3K model. I don't think this is handling it very greatly right now. This model tends to struggle with initiating a line of storms, which is kind of key on this event, so I don't really like this model a whole lot for now. But again, just to give you different scenarios, I'll show you what this model is seeing. So again, time frame's up there in your top left. Your day is to the left of the time. All right. So this is valid for right now. Ironically enough, it does see the storms out here for West Kentucky to Illinois. The problem is it's a little bit too far west. The actual batch of storms for right now is over there toward Madisonville, Princeton, Hopkinsville, and Murray, Kentucky. This model is trying to say that these storms should be back over to the west in Missouri and Illinois. So it's the opposite of the HRRR model. So neither model absolutely nailed this round of storms. It just didn't. But both models are pretty close. So this is why you kind of take a median of the two. So Advancements 4, late tonight, it does show a couple of strong cells, but nothing too crazy late tonight. Overnight hours does show that line of storms. So pretty similar to the HRRR model. Does show a line of storms around the Ohio River, dropping to the southeast, mainly east-southeast. But does not see the southern activity that the HRRR model saw. It doesn't. So again, kind of one of those scenarios. That's why I said don't take the location verbatim. Look at the threat. Okay. Advancements forward around lunchtime. It doesn't really see a whole lot. And if this happens, we have a problem. We have a problem because the afternoon and evening rounds of storms will have even more fuel than advertised to work with. We need several rounds of storms to avoid the absolute highest ceiling possible. If we start seeing way too many gaps in these storms, and we start seeing way too many breaks, a matter of fact, this model actually shows some sunshine coming out throughout lunchtime in the early afternoon hours. Again, if we see that occurring, that's an absolute problem. It really is. Advancing this forward, the only thing that's weird about this model is it doesn't really indicate a whole lot of storms. It just doesn't, which we know is going to be impossible because the jet streak that we have over us will initiate storms. So we know that's going to occur. So we know this model is a little bit wrong with its initiation. So this is valid for Friday around 5 to 6 p.m. Does show a few supercells. These are supercells from Bowling Green to Paducah out there in west central Kentucky, or western Kentucky, I should say. Those travel off to the northeast. Again, the NAM model wants to kill these weaken these a lot. Again, don't know if that's going to happen because we don't have much of a cap for tomorrow. So advancing us forward to late tomorrow night, it keeps everything pretty discreet. This is a supercell that just went through northern Harlan County. That's traveling from the south to the north there. It does have a cluster of storms out here in western Kentucky. And then it does show some messy storms out here for central and northern Kentucky. But it doesn't really show anything too absolutely wild. Here's the updraft helicity from this model. See how it's a lot more spaced out, not as bright, not as vibrant, not as deep. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because with a closed low pressure moving into a region like it is, with a high pressure sending all of its moisture and warm air up to it, in the middle of that you have all kinds of dry forcing on the backside. All those fancy nerdy terms tell me that there's going to be multiple rounds of storms tomorrow. So what the North America model is showing me does not make sense to what we have learned over the last several years from doing this. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for now. So just overall, just kind of give you a summary here, and I'll get to a few questions, and I'll also show you the SPC's forecast. I think we're looking at multiple rounds of storms tomorrow, probably starting somewhere around the overnight hours here in probably 7 to 8 hours. All right. That first round and those first couple rounds before lunchtime, those should be mainly hail and damaging wind producers, but I cannot rule out a couple of tornadoes because, again, the wind energy that we're dealing with can produce some tornadoes. Not mainly the wind energy, but the wind direction that we're dealing with at different layers of the atmosphere does indicate tornado potential. Okay, so don't let the first couple rounds catch you off guard. At some point, I do think we're going to see a break. This almost always happens in events like this. Very rarely in events like this do we just get massive hours of rainfall. So I do think at some point, probably around lunchtime to the early afternoon hours, I think we probably get a break, maybe around 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or so. How long that break is absolutely key to understanding exactly how much fuel and energy that we're going to have to work with. All right. So what we're looking at now, what's important right now is how these storms are acting out there to our west and how they're going to continue to move in. Do we see morning rounds of storms? How many storms do we see? How effective are they? So again, lots of questions still at play, but just know the ceiling is there for those first two rounds. In the late afternoon and evening, we should have two more lines of storms move through. And the first wave may be more discrete supercellular, and that might be producing the stronger tornado potential. That back line that we talked about late on Friday night, that should be more of your damaging wind and large to very large hail producer with a couple of tornadoes possible within that line as well. So in all, we may have three different segments of storms to worry about. Sometime in the morning on Friday for most folks, anywhere between 2 a.m. to maybe 7 to 8 a.m. or so. A little bit of a break at some point. And then afternoon, and we'll have a round or a wave there. And then late evening to late night on Friday, a round there. So, and I'm going to look over and you're gonna ask George, what am I expecting in my area? Well, everyone in the state right now is at least under a 3 out of 5 risk. So I'll show you this once again. Everyone right now in our state for day 2 is under a 3 out of 5 risk or greater. So this tells us, this answers your questions pretty easily. The only good thing about this type of setup is it's pretty easy to answer questions off of. Everyone in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, every single of the 120 counties, is at play to see severe weather, and not only severe weather, but the upper echelon of severe weather. From about I-75 to points west there, that is a 4 out of 5 or a moderate risk. Okay, so that's even greater. And the only difference really between the 3 out of 5 and the 4 out of 5 is the potential for, or is the confidence in storms really being their peak. All right. Sometime as they get out there toward eastern Kentucky, they should begin to weaken a little bit. Not enough to reduce the severe threat to be like, okay, it's not anything to worry about. You're still going to have higher end storms to worry about. But the only real difference right now between the 4 out of 5 and the 3 out of 5 is this is a little bit better position with the low pressure to the north and the jet streak that we're seeing. And it's also a little bit of a higher confidence in storms actually having their peak outs right there, if you will. That's really the only difference. So I don't want you to look at this color and say, oh, I'm not in the 4 out of 5, I don't have to worry about it. That's still a 3 out of 5 risk. That's still, an upper layer or an elevated severe risk. It is. All right, so I know a lot of people look at this, and if they're not in the bullseye, they don't worry about it. But this is something where I think everyone, if you are in the state of Kentucky, needs to be watching all rounds of severe weather, because we don't know exactly where they're going to go. We just don't. So this is one of those events where, unfortunately, you guys need to have multiple ways to receive alerts, notification. That's an old weather radio, that's your phone, that's, whatever else might be out there. Code Red or Rave apps or whatever, your local communities are using. You can check your emergency pages. I'm sure they have posts about them. So again, everyone needs to have multiple ways to receive alerts. That's your categorical outlook. Here's your tornado outlook. And again, this probably gets updated, I think, around 2 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll put these new maps out around 2 a.m. Eastern time. Tornado outlook looks like this. This is a hatched area, which indicates the potential for a 10% risk of a significant tornado within 25 miles of a point. All right, and then your brown is your 5% risk area, okay? And then your wind looks like this. This is the reason for the moderate risk, by the way. This is a wind-driven moderate risk. The pink area is a whopping 45% chance. So pretty much a 50-50 shot, if you will, for you to see winds that are greater than 57 miles per hour. When you add on to that, this big hatched area, which, by the way, includes all of Kentucky, if I zoom this out, includes all of Kentucky, that indicates at least a 10% risk to see 74 mile per hour or greater wind gust. Okay, so this is a wind-driven moderate risk. And then your hail potential looks like this. The hail potential is definitely greater west of I-75. I think the hail potential out in eastern Kentucky is there, but it's not as great as out here. You will still see large hail out there, but out here in western and central Kentucky by far, it's definitely at play to see some very large hail. We're talking hail that could be up to tennis ball and baseball sized, and it could be widespread. Now, we're not talking about just one random county getting hit. We're talking about widespread large hail that could produce lots of damages. I don't know if you guys have ever been hit by a tennis ball flying out of the sky when 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts are coming, but you can kind of use your imagination and understand that that's not really a good idea. So remaining indoors tomorrow, if you can, understand people have to go to work, do other things, but remaining indoors tomorrow with the multiple rounds at play is definitely going to be your best play by far. Probabilistic outlook looks like this. Oh wait, that's for day three. I'm talking. I'm getting ahead of myself. Getting ahead of myself. But again, that's kind of what we're looking at right now. Look at St. Louis and Illinois up here. I got some storms are rolling. I just want to see. I just want to take a gander real quick, and then I'll get to some of your questions. And they've already got a large hail starting up there. So here's your warning. Here's the warning here. It's a considerable damage threat on this warning for that is golf ball sized hail, 60-mile-per-hour winds. That is quarter sized hail, 60-mile-per-hour winds. That one's going to expire. This is observed, by the way. This is observed 2.75. That's tennis ball sized hail. That's approaching baseball sized hail. 70-mile-per-hour wind. That is a destructive thunderstorm. And then even in this big warning right here, look at that. Look how big that warning is. And again, it's for tennis ball to baseball sized hail and 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So here's kind of a little bit of a look in to understand. Hey, this is already happening to our north. This is not something that we're just making up here. So that's probably just getting started up there too. That's kind of crazy. I just want to see these hail cores. Wow. It'll be a long night for those folks up there. Again, this part right here, by the way, guys, don't get too freaked out. This part right here is going away from us. This is not coming toward us. Our stuff has not formed yet. All right. I'll get to a few of your questions now. I'm not going to stick on here too long. I'm going to answer a lot of questions because I want to get back to the data analysis. By the way, I want to say real quick thank you to our sponsors. I'm not going to do the sponsor ad roll. They know when we do alert emergency broadcasts like this. They know we don't do the ad rolls just like they don't do ad rolls on TV. But I want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. They're the people that allow us to be here for you guys 24/7 throughout all these events. So I really hope that you guys consider using them with whatever project or whatever they might be able to do for you. I really hope you consider using them. If you ever need any information about our sponsors, just always message our page. Again, we can give you all that information, but thank you to all of them because they're the reason we could be here for you guys 24/7. So the sponsor logos that you see scrolling across the screen there, they're not just there to be pretty. They're there because they support us. So we appreciate them so much, and thank you to all of them. And again, thank you for them understanding that we don't roll ads, at least personalized ads like that, during the alert broadcast. Okay. Caitlin, as we mentioned, it's probably going to start tomorrow morning. How do we feel about driving tomorrow? I have to drive to my sister's graduation. Again, a lot of those events should be postponed. We've already been in contact with a couple of school systems and other events that are going to be occurring tomorrow, and we have advised them to delay their event or postpone their event. I doubt schools will call off tomorrow just because again, schools don't really call off for severe weather. Um, they just don't. Although I do have some hesitation about buses traveling, especially in the morning commute and the afternoon commute. If it were up to me, but the thing is you got to remember context matters a lot too, right? They're very close to the end of the year. They're trying to hurry up and finish. The last thing they want to do is delay it by another day. Um, but again, you're talking about does the risk outweigh the reward there? Okay. Again, I'm not going to answer all the specific counties and stuff, guys, when it comes to just what Lamont County see, just because, again, every single one of the 120 counties is under at least a 3 out of 5 risk. That answers your question right there. You are at a higher end severe risk for all day Friday with all rounds. Which round will be the worst? It depends. That's a good question. That's a really good question. It will be one of the later rounds. So either the early afternoon or early evening. It will be one of those rounds that are going to be the worst. Okay. Now, what I will say what I mean when I say it depends is exactly how much does that first line in the afternoon, how much does that affect the environment for the secondary line in the evening? So that's why I say it depends, but it will definitely be one of those afternoon or evening rounds. What kind of damage do you suspect for tomorrow? Again, large hail to very large hail is probably my number one concern because, again, I don't think a lot of us in Kentucky genuinely respect the hail threat when it comes to hail this large, mainly because we don't have to deal with hail this large a whole lot. Sometimes on some storm systems, we get some counties that see golf ball sized hail, maybe even baseball sized hail, but it's usually in one or two counties during an event. We're talking about a widespread event like this. I don't think we know how to respect an event like this, and that's nothing against us in Kentucky. Obviously, I live here too. but we just don't see it a whole lot. So again, I think the large to maybe even giant hail threat is the number one threat for me. Destructive winds would be number two. Again, we could see winds in excess of 70 to 80 mile per hour tomorrow at times. All right, and then the tornado threat. By the way, we haven't even had a chance to talk about that too much. It's there, and it is a significant tornado threat according to the SPC. But again, I think that's third on the list. So again, I think you're looking at all modes genuinely being possible tomorrow. Again, Jacob, I think everyone is at play for every round. So again, the timing questions, guys, are generally going to be 2 a.m. to about 8 a.m. And again, you not everyone's going to see these storms on every round, but we can't. How am I trying to answer that? We can't. I don't want to tell someone they're not going to see around in the morning if we don't know that 100%. Because again, the models don't really see, as you're seeing on the radar here, the models didn't really see a whole lot of this back out here to the west when it was in Paducah and stuff. So again, it goes to show us that the models are not handling this 100% perfectly. They're actually doing pretty well when I look at what's happening up here. So they're actually doing pretty well. But it's not 100% perfect. So again, guys, the real easy answer tomorrow, guys, is just everyone needs to stay alert all day. I know that sucks to hear, and we want more specific and clean time frames. But guys, it's as simple as this. This is a high ceiling event for tomorrow. No matter what time frame I give you, you need to be on alert even beyond those time frames. So again, my advice to you is to stay indoors tomorrow if you can. Cover your vehicles or put your vehicles into a garage or whatever it might be. And make sure you have multiple ways to receive alerts notifications and make sure your devices are charged at all times for tomorrow. Again, because even if we don't see a tornado tomorrow, right, the hail and damaging wind threat is so large that power lines are probably going to be knocked out in several places. So you've got to have multiple ways to receive alerts and have those plans in place. There will be some very heavy rainfall tomorrow. Flash flooding is not a major concern to me tomorrow. It's definitely a concern, but the storms are going to be moving so fast that flash flooding, we might see a couple of flash flood warnings, but I don't think we're going to see widespread flash flooding because the storms are going to be moving so fast. Do we see the moderate risk being shifted east or a high risk being issued? That's a great question. If it were me, I can't talk for them. They have all kinds of cool in-house tools that we don't have, access to, that the general public does not have access to. But if it were me, I probably would leave the forecast alone. I think they did a pretty good job. From everything that I'm seeing right now, I think they did a pretty good job. I don't think at this point this requires a high risk. That does not mean that this is not a really big event, guys. Even us getting a moderate risk in Kentucky is pretty rare. I know it doesn't seem like that because we've had quite a few over the last few years, but think about it. It only happens once or twice a year for us. It really doesn't happen as often as some people may think. So even a 4 out of 5 or moderate risk is quite rare for Kentucky. A high risk really only happens once or twice for the entire country every year, and we've already seen 2 high risk this year. Again, I don't at this point. I don't think a high risk is required for tomorrow. That can change with new data that's coming in here in a little bit. And again, we'll just have to watch and see how these storms unfold. I will say this: if we don't see that much of a morning round, and if the afternoon round comes a little bit earlier in the afternoon, where we have more space between the 2 late rounds, then you could probably argue that by the 2 o'clock update tomorrow from the SPC that they may need to add a high risk. That's probably the only scenario where that could happen. But again, I do think we see morning rounds of storms. So I think the forecast that they have out right now is actually pretty good. I think they could probably add a 15% tornado risk somewhere out here, maybe West Indiana, South Illinois, West Kentucky. That would probably be the only change that I personally would make. Outside of that, I think they have a really good forecast. Can you give us any good news about the storm system? So again, yeah, we do have the butts potential there. I don't think it's a reality, but we do have a scenario where the storm system could bust a little bit, if you will. Again, I think no matter how you slice it, you're talking about strong to severe storm activity, no matter what really happens, because you have so many chances, right, guys? Once you have so many chances of something, eventually it's going to hit. Uh, so, but the way that we can get the storm system to be a little bit more tamed is if we have more activity in the morning. The only problem with that is we're still looking at a large hail and damaging wind threat in the morning. But the only good news is about that we won't see as much in the afternoon and evening in terms of potential. That's the only way. And again, it would have to storm for hours and hours and hours and hours in the morning. I don't think that's the case. Again, we have multiple rounds tomorrow, guys. So again, and all these times are west to east. So let me do this for you. I'm seeing a lot of timing questions. So once I get off this broadcast, I'm going to try to make you a timing map. But the problem with that is that we have multiple rounds tomorrow. So what I'm going to do right now, real quick, for everyone asking about timing, because again, that seems to be a very big thing. Even though I keep telling you guys that there's multiple rounds to this. So look, all these storms are going to continuously come in from the west and go east, okay? So all these times are going to be, earlier in the window will be west, later in the window will be east, okay? So again, I'm going to draw, maybe split the state in half like that, okay? The problem with that, once again, is that the first line that we're looking at may start around the Ohio River and dive southeast. So we can't just make a very nice clean, this is what I'm talking about. You can't just make a very nice clean cut timing thing. But as for where I think the peak time frames may be for the very peak of the storms. Now, again, I want you to remember that when I draw these numbers, storms are going to occur outside of this window that I'm giving you. This is just, for me, in my opinion, the peak window, if you will. And so, again, that probably looks a little bit something like this. I would say probably 2 to 5 for West Kentucky. These are going to be Eastern times, by the way. So this is something I would say. Probably 3 to 7 for here in Central Kentucky. And then probably something like, I don't know, 4. No, probably a little bit later than that. I would say 5 to maybe 9 p.m. out here in Eastern Kentucky, just because there's so much more space out here. So again, that's kind of what I would do. That again, I can't make a specific timing graphic because there are multiple rounds to this. Not only are there multiple rounds to this, but each round is going to be moving in a different way than the other round that moved before it. So you see how complex this is. That's why we can't just say, hey, Radcliffe, you're going to see storms from 2 to 5 p.m. You're going to go after that. You can't do that. So again, this is the peak windows right here. These are your peak storm where I think the absolute peak of the storms will be in these areas. You're absolutely going to see storms even produce a severe risk outside of these windows. These are all PM, by the way. Yes, these are all PM. So again, these are the peak windows we're going to see around in the morning, probably sometime between 2 to 8 a.m. Exactly who all gets hit by that is a question because we don't know where exactly they're going to initiate at. When they initiate, we could tell you, hey, this is the track of this is the track of that, so on and so forth. But we got to wait for the first domino to fall. That's how an event like this is to be handled. You have to wait for the first domino to fall, and then you'll understand the reaction of each domino after. So that's why we're not getting into too many questions about, hey, what's Frankfurt seeing? Hey, what's my zip code seeing? Hey, what's going to happen on my front porch? Because we have to wait for the first domino to fall. And anyone that tells you that they know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow is lying to you because you have to wait for that first domino to fall. Which, again, is not an answer that anyone wants to give. You know, I would love to be able to sit here and tell you guys exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. But that's just not the case. When you're dealing with 4 or 5 rounds of storms, that first line is going to tell that second line what to do. That second line is going to tell that third line what to do, so on and so forth. And if they're off by just a little bit versus what the model data is seeing, well, then the whole forecast timing is off. So that's kind of why I'm avoiding a lot of the, questions about specific counties and zip codes is because, again, you have to wait for that first domino to fall. And my job is to give you guys the truth, and that's the truth. Yes, I will definitely be live tomorrow. No, this is 100% happening. Again, guys, we're looking at probably four rounds tomorrow. So yes, this will be an all-day Friday thing, anywhere between Friday 2 a.m. to Saturday 2 a.m. So that 24-hour window, I just simply enough, guys, just to prepare for that 24-hour window for there to be multiple rounds of severe weather within that window. Saturday during the day looks fine. This cold front comes through on the backside of these storms, and we're actually going to get some very pleasant weather this weekend. Maybe some spotty rain showers, but nothing too bad for this weekend. Yes, I will definitely be live tomorrow. You guys know I will post several updates. You guys know I'll be live several times. When the storms are actually occurring, we will have wall-to-wall coverage. You guys know we got your back. You guys know we got your back. What time will you be live? Whenever the storms are getting close. So that's a fluid answer. That's a fluid answer. Is it expected to be cooler weather next week? Yes. Yes. Especially next weekend. Explain these 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts sustained, or explain these 80-mile-per-hour winds sustained or gust. These will be gusts. No, there will be rain, but these are thunderstorms, guys. They're going to have all modes possible. I think we're focusing. I think we're getting too like. I think we're trying to. What's the word I'm looking for here? I think we're trying to find any way out of this. This is 100% going to happen tomorrow. You're going to have a large to very large hail threat. You're going to have a tornado threat. You're going to have a damaging wind threat. Which round is going to be the strongest? Which round is going to be the dominant one? Again, in my opinion, based off of experience, it would be one of the afternoon or evening rounds. But we have four distinct windows tomorrow where storms can go. Early in the morning, like around 2 to 8 a.m. Eastern time. Maybe three rounds, or three windows, sorry. 2 to 8 a.m. Eastern time. We'll get a break at some point, a late morning to early afternoon. And then we have a late afternoon window, probably somewhere between 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. Maybe closer to 2, if you're nitpicking time frames. So I'm just trying to give you guys general windows here. And then maybe a little bit of a small break, and then we have the final line coming through anywhere between 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern time. Okay? So we have three different distinct windows there. So this is what I'm talking about. Hey, just prepare for an all-day type of thing. Is it going to storm all day long, every single minute? No. But just prepare for an all-day thing so that when it happens, you're not caught off guard. When is the lowest and highest tornado threat for tomorrow? Again, I think the lowest is probably with the morning rounds, and the highest is probably with the afternoon and evening rounds. Amber, thank you for your 500-star donation. I appreciate that. Brianna, thank you for your 20 stars. Wendy, thank you for your 45 stars. Brianna with another 20 stars. Thank you guys very much for all of your star donations. I appreciate you. Thank you for all the shares and likes on the stream, by the way, guys, on both YouTube and Facebook. Thank you very much. All right, I think for now that's going to be it. We have some new model data rolling through here soon, so I want to hop off and take a look at that. And of course, I'll make a post on our Twitter and Facebook with that new information, so make sure you're following us on Twitter and Facebook. Again, Weather Now, Kentucky, on all platforms. Again, guys, take a breath. Take a breath. Tomorrow is a high ceiling event, but it's something that we're going to be able to get you through. So as long as you're paying attention to alerts, notifications, and practicing safe practices, having multiple ways to receive warnings, staying indoors, staying off the roads, cover your vehicles, you're going to get through tomorrow. Most injuries, most deaths, when it comes to weather, are people that are ignoring the calls that we're trying to make, or the weather world's trying to make. Now, there are obviously some disasters that no matter how much you prepare for, it's going to happen, so on and so forth. But 90% of the time, if you are practicing safely, you're going to be okay. Just my advice to you tomorrow is to expect a 24-hour window, 4 rounds maybe within that window. Make sure you have in multiple ways receive alerts, notifications, even if it's not from us. Just make sure you have someone you trust, so on and so forth. We'll get you through tomorrow. We will. Charles, thank you for your $5 donation. I appreciate that, my friend. Again, if you have so many questions, if you're wondering if you should be sleeping or awake, play it safe. Be awake. And obviously, if you look at a radar on your phone, if it's nothing near you, take a little nap. You set little alarms. Make sure you have your alerts, your sound turned on your phone so you can be woken up if an alert goes off. So again, it's not something you got to absolutely freak out about, but this is something you should prepare for. Preparations should be finished by tonight, because tomorrow you will not have time. These storms will be moving rapidly and causing so much destruction that you will not have time to prepare your shelters tomorrow. You should have everything prepared by the time you go to bed tonight. That said, I'm George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here with Weather Now Kentucky. We'll get you through tomorrow, folks. Don't freak out too much. And of course, I'll post several updates for you, and we'll be live throughout the duration of the event tomorrow. But for now, we have more work to do behind the scenes. Make sure you stay safe until next time. I messed up my outro there. I messed up my outro. That was very awkward. I messed up my outro. Until next time, stay safe, folks.